Today marks 1 year since the Hamas terrorist attacks against Israel. In Jerusalem, a siren rang out at 6:29 a.m. to mark the hour when Hamas-led militants launched rockets into Israel at the start of the October 7th attack last year. Joining us right now is Admiral James Stavridis. He is retired U.S. Navy admiral and a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. He's now Carlyle Group Global Affairs Vice Chair and an NBC News Chief International Analyst. His new book is called The Restless Wave. It is out tomorrow. And Admiral, thank you for joining us on this day. It's kind of amazing to think it's been a year.
Yeah.
What would you say has changed over the course of that year? Where do we stand now?
Yeah, let's start with the human cost, Becky. 1,200 Israelis killed, 40,000 Palestinians. Those are big numbers in and of themselves, of course. But when you put it on a population-adjusted basis, Israel's a country of only 10 million, maybe 5 million Palestinians in and around the region. Those numbers are kind of astronomical in terms of human cost. Secondly, the events have really put the Palestinian statehood issue back on the table. And it's also raised very serious questions about anti-Semitism, both in the United States and abroad. And then third and finally, and I think of interest particularly to investors, the chances for a wider war in the region, that being defined as full-on combat between Israel and Iran, is now hovering somewhere around 1 in 4, uncomfortably high, Becky.
Yeah, we are waiting for a response to what happened last week when Iran launched 200 missiles into Israel, ballistic missiles. This is a step up from anything that had been done in the recent memory. So what is the Israeli response to this? What are the negotiations with the Americans for what they may or may not do?
Yeah, let me put myself in the Israeli Pentagon, if you will. The options that the military will be developing will kind of range from cyber, in other words, non-kinetic. They'll go up to targeted killing. They'll move through further attacks on proxies. All of that is kind of happening. Then you're into things like striking Iranian nautical targets, or you could go after the energy grid of extreme concern to those looking at the global economy. You could go after the military-industrial complex. I think that's probably where it lands, going after the facilities that build and store and maintain, for example, these ballistic missiles. At the far end of the escalatory spectrum, you could go after the Iranian nuclear program. I think all of that is on the table, and as a four-star working both in the Pentagon and in command of NATO, that would have been the type of menu I would have presented to the political leadership.
So after you presented that menu, when invariably some politician or somebody else said, okay, then walk us through the permutations of what would happen next if we go do those things, you would tell them what?
I would say the lower you are on the spectrum, and I just gave it to you in ascending order of violence, the lower you are, the better the chances that we avoid that 1 in 4 chance that this goes high order. Therefore, going after the nuclear weapons sites or going after the energy grid, that invites a much larger response. If you go after the military-industrial complex, for example, you might be able to see this thing de-escalate a little bit.
But two things. One is that there are some who say, look, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to go after certain parts of their apparatus, including their nuclear facilities, perhaps, at a time when they are in disarray, and that this opportunity may not exist again. So how do you weigh that against whatever you believe the retribution may or may not be? And do you think to yourself, okay, their retribution would be large, but potentially Israel, along with its allies, including the U.S., would be able to take much of that out, if you will?
I think that's a defendable proposition. What you're implying is go big and go after the nuclear sites. Here's the problem. Iran is 3 times the size of Texas. They have 25 of these sites all around the country. Many of them are buried 300 feet 3 stories underground. Intelligence is imperfect. It's the most highly defended sector. So if you choose to go after those sites, it is a defendable proposition. You must be prepared for perhaps not being as smashingly successful as you've been over the last couple of months, and you must be prepared for a pretty significant response. And I'll close with that. The Iranians still have 2,000 more ballistic missiles. They launched 200. So it is a risk calculus. And finally, the United States, at least with the current administration, is not going to be participating in strikes on the nuclear sites. You might roll the dice for a new administration.
Admiral, is it fair to say that while I know you've written that the United States would step in and defend Israel at all costs, is it fair to say that there is likely some disagreement about what is best, because they have, these two nations, not 100% alignment in terms of what they think might be best for the immediate future? Israel is right there. Israel is going to be the one that deals with any strike that comes first. We're a little further afoot. And while we want to make sure we defend our ally, an incredibly important ally who has been so much over the last year, there's going to be some disagreement in the room.
That's absolutely correct. And newsflash, there'll be an election in just over 30 days, which will probably also engender different approaches depending on whether we have Team Trump or Team Harris coming in. Certainly, from my perspective as a military analyst and someone who was in charge at one point of U.S.-Israeli military-to-military activity when I was NATO commander, I would say we need to stand very strongly with Israel. That's in our best long-term interest.
29 days, Admiral.
Who's counting?
Days. But who's counting? 29 days of the election. Your guess as to the outcome, I wouldn't even venture. But yeah, it's not 30 anymore. It's 29. It's incredible. I have a little counter here. 18 hours, 12 minutes, and 58 sequends.
Keep me posted, Joe.
I'll keep you. Tomorrow it's going to be 28 days, I think. I think I got that right.
There's a movie called that. Admiral, thank you very much for your time this morning. We do appreciate it.
You bet, Becky. Thanks.